Why were these four countries never invaded by the Germans? So, Sweden was a major supplier of iron ore to Germany, and having trade relations was beneficial to Germans than disrupting it by waging a war against them. Switzerland was spared due to its geography and strategic neutrality. Portugal was forced to stick with the British due to the Anglo-Portuguese alliance, and invading Portugal might have meant imminent danger from the British. While Spain was badly hurt from a devastating civil war, and Germans didn't want to spend their money on them as they had other matters to deal with.
There's a country that no one recognizes except the United States. Fun fact is that this country sits right in the US soil, and they have no problem with it. This country has its own president, currency, and 38 legal citizens. But if somehow they discover huge reserves of oil in their territory, who's gonna keep that oil? Tell me in the comments.
So we already know the safest countries during World War III, but where should you not stay in the next World War? Firstly, in the United States, if you live in cities like New York, Chicago, Houston, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Washington, D.C., then you're really cooked. In Russia, the areas around Moscow and St. Petersburg would be risky to stay at. In China, major coastal cities like Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou are dangerous. Already the South China Sea region is a full hotspot, and North Korea would be blown up to pieces due to its size, so better get out of there. These would be the safest countries in World War III. So you might think that Switzerland is the best option, as it has mountainous terrain and a significant number of nuclear shelters, but experts suggest that you should get as far as possible from Europe, Russia, China, and United States. Then the next option is Australia and New Zealand, as it's far away from hotspots. Moreover, in South America, you could choose Chile and Argentina, as South America has no external conflicts. Also, Antarctica might be a good place to save yourselves. This is how Denmark isn't as innocent as you think. So apart from owning this gigantic island, Denmark is technically the owner of the Baltic Sea because it can lock these countries inside whenever Denmark's mood is off. In World War II, Denmark surrendered in 6 hours to protect its autonomy and avoid casualties, knowing it was just a stepping stone for Germany to reach Norway, and it was a pretty smart decision. Lastly, due to global warming, the countries near equator would become unlivable, while Greenland would become super comfy to live in. So what are the biggest enemies in Asia? Firstly, the most obvious are India and Pakistan, which have territorial disputes over Kashmir. India has another beef with China over the Aksai Chin and Arunachal Pradesh region. Next up, North and South Korea are at war since the 1950s, which ended in an armistice, not a peace treaty. China and Taiwan are notable. China thinks that Taiwan should reunify with the mainland, while Taiwan maintains its de facto independence. One more is the Israel and Palestinian conflict. Both groups think that they are righteous owner of the same land. Looking at European map, we see that almost all countries are in the EU, but specifically Norway not being a part is unsettling, as all of its buddies are in the Union. But what's the reason behind that? So firstly, Norway doesn't want to share its energy reserves and fishing zones with other EU members, the same reason Iceland won't join the Union. Secondly, the people of Norway don't want to join either, as visible in 2 referendums held in 1972 and 1994. Did you know that California was once proposed to be divided? The idea was to split California into 3 states, or even 6 states. This new division would have allowed each new state to have their own government so that they could work even better. But there weren't enough voters for either of the proposals, so the state legislature and Congress dumped this idea. Shortest-lived countries, Part 2. So in 1939, Carpatho-Ukraine declared independence following the disintegration of Czechoslovakia, but it was invaded by Hungary the next day, meaning it remained independent for only 24 hours. Did you know that this giant was brutally defeated by these smaller countries? So, firstly, Indonesia, or the Majapahit Empire, initially sided with the Mongols, then turned against them. Secondly, Japan defeated the Mongols twice using their typhoon power. Then Vietnam, under this guy's command, repelled 3 Mongol invasions.
Trump has just showed interest in buying Greenland and annexing Canada, saying that it should be a state. According to some reports, Trump suggested that if Denmark doesn't cooperate, they would face high tariffs as a punishment. This has started to ring alarms in Europe, while Denmark and Greenland have stated that Greenland is simply not for sale.
This is probably the weirdest border in all of Europe. This little useless island between Finland and Sweden was evenly divided by both countries. However, in 1885, Finland wanted to build a lighthouse, so they naturally built it on the highest point of the island, not realizing it was actually on the Swedish side. This little mistake would probably have meant another world war if it were between countries like Greece and Turkey. However, this is Nordics we talkin'. They peacefully solved the situation by drawing this weird border to once again equally divide the island.